Ian goes to a convenience store with Vincent, his father, who uses his supernatural abilities to make several bottles of drinks invisible. With the bottles hidden, the man walks to the cash register, and so as not to arouse suspicion, he buys a single piece of gum from the shelf. With the theft complete, Vincent goes outside where he tells his son that he will go get the car. Ian remains at the window to keep the illusion active, but suddenly a group of college students passes by, and one of the young women interacts with the young man, calling him weird. This causes the mutant to lose his concentration. And when she notices that her drinks are no longer in stock, the owner of the establishment confronts the thief. As soon as she sees Vincent driving by, the woman runs to attack him with a hammer. And Ian, furious, orders her to back off. However, the saleswoman is not intimidated and walks toward the young man, who pulls out a gun to defend himself. Realizing that the woman will not back down, Ian shoots, causing her to fall to the ground. And at that moment, it is revealed that the criminal was not armed, but rather making a fake gun with his hand. The young man has extremely powerful psychic abilities, capable of even manipulating the minds of his victims, making them think they have been hurt by him. Noticing that the situation has taken a dangerous turn, Vincent takes his son away from there. And minutes later, a police car arrives at the scene. Desperate, the woman screams that she has been shot, but the police officer says she is fine. And despite being totally confused, the saleswoman orders the man to chase the criminals. Seconds later, Ian and Vincent flee through the city streets while being pursued by the police car. And during the escape, the young man scolds his father for the robberies they are forced to carry out. In order to gain distance, the mutant creates an illusion, making the police officer see the car turning a corner. This causes the man to leave in pursuit of the fake vehicle. And soon after, Ian continues to scold his father, saying that they could simply rob a bank, which would make them rich for the rest of their lives. However, Vincent orders his son not to talk about these things again, and tells him that they must always follow his only two rules. Don't draw attention to yourselves, and don't use your powers against your own family. Upon hearing this, Ian becomes enraged, and in order to end the persecution once and for all, he uses his powers on the police officer, who sees a shower of glass fragments around him. The officer then skids and flips over the road, ending up in the middle of a gas station. As soon as he leaves the car, the man rests while leaning on the structure of the car, which is in perfect condition. And that scene leaves the gas station employee totally confused. Far away, a mysterious woman watches the recordings from several security cameras scattered throughout the city and orders her driver to call her helicopter immediately. The next day, Ian wakes up after a nightmare and meets his father, who gives him a plate of fried eggs as his 18th birthday cake. The pair live in a kind of abandoned ship so they can keep their distance from the rest of the population. Soon after, the man tries to convince his son to spend the day with him and shows him a photograph of his deceased mother, saying that he misses the days when they were all together. However, Ian does not want to stay and prepares to leave. Concerned, the man tries to convince his son not to do so, but he does not care and sticks to his decision. So Vincent decides to give Ian his present before he leaves. And the young man just goes to his room where he hits his wooden training dummy to vent his anger. Despite this, Ian decides to leave the house to enjoy his birthday and jumps out of his bedroom window. Far away, the police officer who fell for the mutant's illusion talks to his barista friend and tells her that when he tried to obtain the security camera recordings from the gas station and convenience store, the owner said that the files had already been confiscated by their colleagues. This conversation catches the attention of one of the establishment's customers, who uses a kind of psychic ability to attack the officer, who falls to the ground already lifeless. Later, a tactical squad prepares to raid Ian's father's boat, who is quickly surrendered by them. The leader then thanks Vincent for deceiving the police, as this allowed them to find the individual known as Percepto, a mutant with psychic abilities. At that moment, one of the soldiers approaches his boss and reveals that they found Ian wandering around an arcade. Meanwhile, at the city's arcade, the coffee shop customer walks around looking for Ian, and it is then revealed that the man is one of the Perceptors. Noticing that a pair of men have just arrived, the infiltrator acts quickly, and after knocking out one of the criminals, he uses the radio to alert the rest of the squad. The leader then orders all her soldiers to go to the location, and quickly, the Perceptor uses his powers to trick one of them, causing the madman to shoot several people. Soon after, the mutant tries to approach Ian, but ends up being captured. And at the same time, a pair of strangers remove the young man from the scene of the confrontation, trying to prevent him from being taken away. Perceptor waits until they are in a more open area and confronts his enemies with his martial arts skills. At that moment, the man notices that some virtual reality players are walking through the arena, and in order not to cause even more panic, he tries not to hit them with his blows. At the end of the fight, Perceptor breaks free from his restraints and outside, the squad leader meets Ian, asking him to come with her if he wants to stay alive. As soon as he sees his unconscious father in the vehicle, the young man despairs, and taking advantage of the distraction, the woman puts the restrained helmet on him. With Ian restrained, the squad leaves the scene, and no matter how hard he tries to stop them with the illusion of an accident, the Perceptor loses sight of them. Hours later, the mutant is taken to a laboratory where the leader introduces herself as Adriana and reveals that they are at war with an organization called the Consciousness. The woman then reveals that for many years the psychic mutants of this group have been manipulating humanity to act in their favor, controlling the wars, politics, and economies of the planet. Therefore, Adriana says that all they are trying to do is protect what remains of democracy in the world, and claims that men like Perceptor will try to stop them at any cost. Confused, Ian asks why he was captured, and the leader explains that they want to obtain the formula from his blood, so that they can create or contain those psychic powers. Upon hearing this, the young man refuses to cooperate with the organization. But Adriana does not give up, and shows him a photograph of his mother, saying she can give him more information about her if he decides to cooperate. Without thinking twice, Ian uses his powers on her, making the woman see herself on a beach. But the illusions are quickly interrupted, and he orders them to take him to his father if they want to continue with all this. Upon reuniting with his son, Vincent asks him not to believe anything those people are saying and to convince the young man. Adriana tells him that he should test his mind-readating abilities on his own father, since there are secrets he has never told before. Desperate, Vincent begs his son not to listen to the woman. But Ian is curious about what they are saying and uses his powers on the man's mind. Thanks to this, the mutant discovers that his father has worked for the organization in the past, and during an emergency alert, he took advantage of everyone's distraction to steal a baby from the testing room. Soon after, the man fled the scene with the child in his arms. And upon returning to reality, Ian goes into shock. While Vincent falls unconscious on the bed after having his mind invaded, the young man realizes that this is not his real father. The next day, Ian is still in the lab room when he is surprised by Esther, who says it's time to leave that place. At that moment, the woman reveals that she is an infiltrator and takes the young man to the elevator. While Ian waits, Esther fights dozens of guards with her great martial arts skills, defeating each of them with ease. Before leaving, the mutant asks the woman to help him rescue Vincent, because even though he is not his father, the man may have valuable information. Noticing the prisoner's escape, Adriana sounds the laboratory alarm, and her boss states that the young man cannot leave that place alive, so they must eliminate him immediately. At the same time, one of the doctors goes to the central security room and eliminates all the guards in a matter of seconds, revealing himself to be none other than Perceptor. Outside, the fugitives try to escape in one of the laboratory's vehicles. And despite having part of the car destroyed by gunfire, they manage to get away from the scene. However, during the trip, the tires end up bursting, causing a major accident to avoid being found by Perceptor. Ian uses his powers to make the vehicle invisible. And at dusk, the group leaves to hide in a roadside hotel. In the morning, Esther and Ian get to know each other better, and the woman reveals that she is part of the Consciousness organization, which is why she decided to save the young man. Soon after, the mutant invades Vincent's mind once again, but none of the memories seem to make sense, and the only thing he can see is a person trapped in a van with part of his hand injured. Later, Ian uses his powers to trick one of the bank tellers in town, managing to steal a large amount of money without anyone noticing. Now that they have enough money to survive, the pair rush back to the apartment, and although they notice that Vincent is no longer there, they remain unconcerned. Suddenly, Ian hears a vehicle approaching the place and runs to warn his friend, asking her to stay in the bathroom. Quickly, the young man creates an illusion around the apartment to make it look like an abandoned room. And seconds later, the Perceptor enters through the door. As soon as he looks in one of the mirrors, the man realizes that he is in an illusion. And when he comes face to face with Ian, he explains that illusory powers are not capable of altering reflections. In a panic, the young man rushes to attack the intruder, but the Perceptor acts defensively and tries to explain that he is there to help him. However, Ian does not believe this and continues to attack his opponent, starting a fierce fight as they alternate between illusion and reality. The Perceptor then performs a maneuver that throws the young man's body against the table and tells him that his presence is the only reason Adriana's soldiers have not appeared since he dealt with most of them. Soon after, the man assures Ian that he is on the same side, but Ian does not believe him and tries to attack him with a taser. The Perceptor quickly blocks the attack, and after seeing Esther hiding in the bathroom, he decides to invade the young man's mind. This causes the mutant to see Adriana sending a Perceptor to Warsaw, saying that someone named Kaminsky wants to use the formula on his body. With all these visions, the young man ends up unconscious. And minutes later, Vincent finds Ian lying on the floor of the apartment. After waking his son, the man tries to convince him to go home so they can return to their normal life together. But Ian refuses to do so and decides to head to Warsaw. What he didn't realize was that the money stolen from the bank was already being tracked by Adriana, who had already positioned her men. However, before they could attack them, the soldiers are eliminated by Perceptor. And without wasting any time, the pair enter the location described in Ian's vision. Upon finding the room where he used to play with his mother, the young man searches for clues and finds a hollow part in one of the walls. Ian destroys the passage with his own hands, gaining access to a room full of files from old experiments, as well as the diary of Ursula, the young man's mother. At that moment, the pair find the woman's surname and realize that Ian is none other than Kamensk's grandson. Minutes later, the young man finds some more records about the experiments and goes to talk to Esther. But when he does so, he comes face to face with the Perceptor right next to the woman. The agent explains that he will have all the answers his friend needs. But Ian does not believe it and confronts his adversary with his illusions. However, the Perceptor is unaffected by any of the attacks, and after subduing the young man with his weapon, he reveals that he is none other than his real father. The man then recounts that in the past, during the post-war period of the 1950s, he volunteered for some laboratory tests along with his wife, and they received a dose of the formula that contained the mutant DNA of psychic powers. The problem is that after the perceivers were used in the Cold War, the organizations that led the experiment became concerned, fearing that their guinea pigs would become their newest enemies. This led the leaders to make the decision to get rid of each of the mutants they had created in their laboratories, initiating the destruction of all of them. However, one of the last surviving perceivers, known as Mule, managed to resist the burning of files, as he was much more powerful than the other mutants. As soon as they tried to neutralize him, they managed to escape using his newest ability, which became known as the third power of mutants, and was given the title of mind control. This power made victims totally submissive to the commands of its conjurers, and taking advantage of this, Mule eliminated all the soldiers who tried to hunt him down. Finally, the man reveals that the members of the laboratory agency made all the perceivers unable to have children. However, even after this procedure, Ian was born and his life was interpreted as a true miracle, as he would be the first natural perceiver to exist in the world. At that moment, the laboratory soldiers arrive at the scene, and quickly, the Perceptor orders his son to accompany Esther to the roof. Without thinking twice, the pair flee, and using their weapons, the mutant eliminates dozens of combatants, as well as using an illusion of spiders climbing on their bodies to distract them. At the same time, Esther fights dozens of enemies with her martial arts skills, clearing the way for them to access the terrace. Despite managing to neutralize most of the threats, the man ends up being captured by the squad. And on the roof of the building, Ian and Esther prepare to escape using a construction pipe. Realizing that they don't have much time, the woman jumps toward the ground, and the young man is impressed to see that she has not suffered any injuries. Soon after, Ian climbs down the safety pipe, allowing the pair to escape from the soldiers. In the AY's laboratory, Adriana collects samples of the Perceptor's formula and performs various procedures to force him to tell everything he knows. However, the mutant refuses to hand over his son. And at that moment, the agency chief appears, ordering them to stop everything. Adriana tries to talk to her boss and explains that from now on, Ian is their last chance to get the DNA, as apparently the formula for psychic mutants was lost along with Kaminsky. Meanwhile, Ian's father asks the scientists to give him a glass of water, and so that they don't have to remove the restraint helmet. The scientist decides to make way with a small drill. Thanks to this, the man is able to drink the liquid normally. But as soon as the robot moves away, the Perceptor uses his manipulation on the employee who is controlling the machine. At that moment, it is revealed that Ian's father also has mind control powers, and seizing his chance, he shoots everyone in front of him using the security robot's weapon. After destroying everything and eliminating every employee in the room, Perceptor frees himself from his restraint and decides to spare the scientist who manipulated him. Far away, Ian and Esther arrive at Perceptor's house, where they are greeted by the maid, who takes the pair to talk to Ursula. Upon seeing his mother in that state, the young man is devastated and tries to talk to her, but the woman cannot even move. Soon after, Ian is surprised by his father, who suggests that he enter her mind. Outside, a huge squad from Adriana's agency begins to surround the mansion, preparing to eliminate the family. In doing so, the young man discovers that his mother was responsible for the security of the Perceptor's formula, as she ensured that the only one who knew about it was none other than her own son. Using the toy cubes her baby used to play with, Ursula implanted an encrypted memory in Ian's mind which stored that information throughout his life. The Perceptor then invades his son's mind. And as soon as he sees the formula being formed by the objects, he becomes anxious and tries to break through the woman's mental barrier to capture her. Confused, Ian screams for him to stop. And seconds later, Ursula ends up losing her energy and closes her eyes right in front of her son. This scene leaves Ian in a state of rage. And thanks to that, he finally awakens his third power. To avenge all the suffering Ursula went through to protect him. The young man walks through the mansion while eliminating dozens of soldiers, causing them to shoot each other. Concerned, Esther tries to stop the mutant, but he continues his wave of attacks and walks outside, where he takes control of all the remaining invaders. At that moment, Adriana appears, and when he sees her, Ian becomes even more enraged and forces the squad to kneel while pointing their guns at their heads. Desperate, the leader tries to explain to the mutant that his father is just trying to manipulate him. But the young man doesn't listen to her and says they are about to pay for everything they have done. Suddenly, Vincent appears on the scene and tries to convince Ian to stop all this since all the Perceptor wants is to get his personal revenge through his son's hatred. Trying to silence him, the Perceptor throws his weapon at Vincent, ordering his son to make him join the rest of the soldiers. In a last attempt, Vincent asks Ian to look at the situation around him and explains that the young man doesn't need to end so many lives to avenge his mother. Outraged by his son's delay, the Perceptor controls Vincent's mind, causing him to shoot himself. Panicked by what he has just witnessed, Ian interrupts the soldier's mind control and runs to help Vincent. While Esther is captured and taken away by the traitor before losing his strength, the man asks the young man to see his memories one last time. And in doing so, he discovers that it was his own mother who asked for him to be taken away. As soon as she realized that the scientists in the laboratory were going to hurt her son, Ursula begged Vincent to prevent any harm from coming to Ian and determined to protect the young man. He rescued him from there. From then on, the man raised the psychic mutant as his own son, giving him a normal and happy life. Realizing that he had been wrong from the start, Ian cries, completely devastated and determined to take revenge. He sets out in search of the Perceptor. In a few minutes, the young man finds the traitor hiding in the crowd and uses his powers to make everyone lie down on the ground. Soon after, Ian tries to make his enemy aim at himself, but the man manages to resist, and he decides to attack him directly. While holding Esther at gunpoint, the Perceptor controls dozens of civilians to attack the young man who fights confusedly as he does not want to hurt them. However, realizing that he will not survive if he continues like this, Ian attacks his opponents with objects around him and uses his powers to make them hit each other. In a rage, the Perceptor controls a big man to squeeze the young man's neck. And at that moment, Adriana appears, hitting the man with a well-aimed shot. Soon after, the woman comes down to meet Ian and reveals that he needs to get out of that illusion since he is the only one who can see Esther. At that moment, it is revealed that Esther was nothing more than an illusion created by the Perceptor who accompanied Ian throughout his journey since he escaped from the laboratory. Furthermore, during all the moments they were in combat, Ian was the one who was actually facing the threats. And this revelation leaves the young man completely shaken. Without thinking twice, the young mutant fires at the pair, hitting Perceptor in the chest, who is finally destroyed after all that chaos. However, Ian decides to maintain Esther's illusion and receives a hug as a form of comfort after everything he has been through. Days later, at the memorial ceremony for all those who had passed away, Adriana gives him her contact information because if the young mutant decides to help them at some point, they will be waiting for him. Finally, Ian gets into his vehicle where Esther gives him the gift that Vincent had given his son on his birthday. Upon opening the package, the young man discovers that it is a book about oceans and remembers the moments he spent with his real father while fishing on his boat. At that moment, Ian hears Adriana talking to her boss, revealing that she will eliminate the young man if they realize he will not become an ally. Tired of it all, Ian looks at the pair and conjures his powers one last time so that he can get on with his life without any more interference from evil agencies. So, what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.